Welcome to Reinventing Capitalism, a space where tech, entrepreneurship, and impact intersect. I'm your host, Claudia Thomas. Today we have Evolena de Wilde, founder and CEO of Faircado, a company that offers second-hand alternatives when you shop online. Evolena holds a degree from MIT and has worked for the European Commission, as well as for the Y Combinator-backed startup AirHealth, where she met her co-founder and found the inspiration to build what Faircado is today. We first dive into Evolena's trajectory and discuss how Faircado came about, how it grows, and how they are growing it to the next level. Then we talk about how to decide which companies to expand into, how to turn your competitors into your partners, and the most challenging part of hiring. Finally, we talk about the future of the second-hand industry and how Evolena is working hard to change consumers' perspectives on overconsumption. With over 60 partners and the aspiration to be in the browser of each and every consumer, Faircado is here to stay. Let's dive in. Evolena, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on the podcast with us. Where are you calling from today?
I am in Berlin, and today it is gray, but spring is coming and I just cannot wait.
Oh my God, me neither. Is that where the company is based, in Berlin?
Yes. We are in a beautiful office here in the heart of Berlin.
Awesome. So super excited to have you on this podcast, as we've been discussing prior to the conversation. Let's just get into it. So for listeners that are not super familiar with the second-hand market, why is it important?
Why is it important? It's important for many reasons. One of them being that we have a huge waste and overconsumption problem. We're currently throwing away every second a rubbish truck full of clothes and 9,000 smartphones. And this cannot continue. We know with the overshoot day that we are consuming way more resources than they can replenish in a year. We also know that if we continue like this, we will live on mountains of trash by 2050, and nobody wants that. So we, on one side, have a big problem. On the other side, have a huge potential, which is that most younger consumers are buying secondhand, are turning towards secondhand, and not only the younger ones, actually. So 75% of the millennials and Gen Z we surveyed would buy more secondhand if it was easier on top of that. So there is a huge demand, also because it is cheaper and you can get really high quality stuff for much cheaper than the actual new price. And it is much more environmentally friendly. We're talking about a reduction of up to 80% of the CO2 emissions, plus the waste, plus the virgin material. So it is just an amazing combo of win-win-win situation. And that is why it needs to really become the norm. And it needs to be convenient. And so far, I think most consumers were really struggling with finding the right offers in a ocean of very messy, unstructured data. And so we really, with Faircado, bringing transparency and bringing convenience to this whole market.
It's awesome that you're bringing convenience, because I was reading about the growth of the industry, and the second-hand industry in general, it's growing at a 12% yearly rate, if I'm not mistaken. And they expect
depending on the industry, it can be even depends between 12 and 25.
12, okay. Yeah. Okay. So much more. Okay.
Some segments are, yeah.
Because something that really struck with me was that I read that it's expected to reach more than $60 billion valuation by 2028. And that's like 50% bigger than the current gaming industry, for example.
It is the future. I mean, it's just all of the trends are just tending towards that, and in the shopping and e-commerce trends are really demonstrating that re-commerce is the future of e-commerce. And what we really, we're just trying to make that switch even faster and even bigger and even better for consumers.
So what's your story? How does your passion for sustainability come about?
Well, I was kind of born into it because my parents are very into that as well. And so I grew up in Greenpeace pajamas and mostly commuting by bike and going to demonstrations for more climate action. So in a way that was kind of in my veins already. But I just was very touched. I think one of the main key points in my life was when I watched An Inconvenient Truth, the documentary from Al Gore, when I was 12 years old. And I really got shocked by the state of the world. It was actually, at 12 years old, you're just like, I didn't have a TV as a kid, so I was playing mostly outside and building stuff with my brothers and kind of learning how to do things with my hands and going to the scouts and playing outside a lot, and then realizing there that animals are in great danger, nature is in great danger, our oceans, even humans. It's about our own survival here, right? And so when you realize this at 12 years old, I think it can come a bit as a shock. And my reaction to that, because I was kind of raised to always find solutions to things that I would see as problems, was to enter politics and to get elected in the kids city council in my city by my school peers, and then try and implement new bike lanes and more recycling and this kind of stuff that a 12-year-old can come up with.
Wow.
And
That's quite young.
Right, yeah. It never left me afterwards. I think I had periods where I was more or less active into that, but then went on to study PR and European studies and wanted to actually get more active on a European level, because I come from Brussels, so I was also very much in the EU bubble from quite an early stage, and I also really admire the European construction on many levels. And then actually wanted to discover the other side of the change makers, which is more the innovators and the entrepreneurs, and moved to Berlin for first an internship in a startup, and then got completely hooked. Never left Berlin and never left the startup world, and that was in 2016, so quite a while back already.
So what happened since 2016 up until now?
I worked for two very successful B2C startups. One where the founders exited after 4 years with a $500 million exit. And so very successful growth, which taught me a lot about how to grow a company successfully very fast.
Which company?
It was called Hello Body.
Okay.
Natural cosmetics, D2C at the influencer marketing peak and glorious times. It was very interesting. Not entirely in line with my values, but very interesting.
I can imagine. To see something that grows that much, want it or not, it's experience that you take with you. So I'm sure you're now using a lot of what you learned at that company.
Totally. And the founders became my first angel investors afterwards. So that was also nice return of the boomerang. And then the second one was YC-backed Danish scale-up AirHelp doing flight compensation. Really interesting company as well. It was I think there was 600 employees when I joined, and I was working quite closely with the CMO and the CEO on some strategic projects. It was very interesting as well, a completely different experience. But so after that, I met Ali, my co-founder at AirHelp, and we were looking into how can we put our skills and our talent at solving the world's biggest problems, because quite honestly, that wasn't really what we were doing back then. And we were a bit frustrated about it. And so I have been buying secondhand for my whole life. I think 90% of the stuff I own is secondhand. And I was very frustrated by the experience. It was, we were experiencing the beginning of the pandemic. Gorillas popped up in Berlin where we could get everything delivered in 10 minutes. All groceries, and then we would also have Amazon Prime that would deliver everything in a few hours, and then you would have Tinder, that another technology that would get you anything you want at your doorstep in a few minutes. And next to that, you had this secondhand experience and the sustainable shopping experience in general, which was either extremely inconvenient, where you would need to scroll through millions of offers and have all these tabs open and no way to actually have any sort of transparency over the offers that are all unique, that are spread between 70 platforms in Germany only. And then the other alternative on sustainable shopping was often way more expensive. So only affordable to a lucky few, or to people who would really decide that, they wanted to make this a priority, but they would cut on some other budget. And I thought, it's not okay that in 2021, 2022, we're still stuck with this kind of experience that's really more from last century than from this century, right? And then with the rise of AI and so on, we discussed it a lot with Ali, and then he had the idea of this meta platform that aggregates everything, and then you can take an image of anything you want or upload a screenshot, and then we find you the secondhand options for it, and we just try and take you where you are to help you consume better and also save CO2 along the way while saving money. So that was it. That was the beginning of it.
So did you guys speak about wanting to found something together, or was it more like organic, you guys discussing about the troubles that you had yourselves with buying secondhand clothing, and then you came up with a solution?
It was really coming from our own experience and our own frustration. And then it wasn't at all like I wasn't looking to become a founder myself. To be honest, I didn't even really, I mean, I had considered it, obviously. And during the pandemic, I also founded a nonprofit where we would help women artists to become more financially independent. And so I had already a first experience as a founder. I had gone through that, but I actually didn't search for an idea desperately like I've heard a few people do. For me, it was really, I have this problem, and then we discussed it over lunch with Ali, and then he had this idea that I found genius of like, there's 2.3 billion people going on Amazon every month, and 2 out of 3, so 60% of these people would like to buy more sustainably but don't know how. So Ali's idea was we pop up on a corner of their window with the secondhand alternative for what they're looking for. It's cheaper, it's better for the environment, it works with an AI that's like good at recognizing exactly what you're looking for. When I heard that, I was like, I'm in. Like, this is amazing. This is exactly what I need. So that the pain point and the solution was really the starting point of us founding together. Turned out that we were quite complementary as well. So he is now the CTO and I am now the CEO, and we are very happy into this. Yeah.
So Faircado, just for the listeners, that's the name of Evolena's company, gives you secondhand options to what you initially want to buy. Tell us, how does it work and how you filter for these options?
Yeah, so we basically have partnerships with some of the biggest secondhand resellers like eBay, Vestiaire Collective, Back Market, across several categories, mainly electronics, books, and fashion. When you go shopping online on any platform selling new products, we are working with a browser extension that is recognizing what you're trying to buy and then popping up on the corner of your screen with the best alternatives in secondhand that we could find across all of those platforms. So we have currently 150 million offers that we aggregate. So there's quite a big pool there from 60 partners or so, mainly in Germany and the UK. We also launched an app now where you can, mainly on the fashion side of things, scroll through offers or upload a screenshot and we match it with the secondhand options for what you're trying to buy, or take a picture of something when you're in a shop, or your friend has a great sofa or a great top that you've been looking for a while, and you can just Faircado it and kind of take a picture, and then we just match it. So we work on natural language processing to process the text of the input that you're giving us, and also on image matching. And so we try and be as accurate as possible with our recommendations.
But do you search on the Faircado extension, or you search on, say, Google, and then Faircado's extension naturally gives you the alternatives?
You can do both. You actually have a search bar in the extension, but mostly we would pop up to kind of be your nice little assistant that, when you're about to make the mistake of buying something new for twice as expensive, we would say, hey, actually, you could buy this for 50% cheaper and 80% less CO2 here. And then you just can click there and you're redirected to eBay, for instance.
Okay. So you mentioned you work with eBay, Vestiaire Collective, so like the biggest retailers. How did they react to the release of your product? Because somehow it can be competition, but it seems like you've managed to build a partnership out of it. Like, how did you handle this process?
Well, see it like this. those platforms have been around for quite a while. They pay millions to Meta, to TikTok, to Google in order to acquire new users and retain them. What we offer them is to say, from now on, you can directly compete with Amazon, with Zalando, with Google, and pay users for a fraction of the price and get really qualified leads. All of them. We're very happy about it. And so we had 100% conversion rate on the partner side. And it's even more now that actually we get a lot of partners in our mailbox that are future partners who are just begging us to be part of Faircado as well, because it is just for them 100% win. They don't take any risk and they get new customers or returning customers that are very qualified because they already know what they want. And all of that for a really good price. So actually, because they pay us for the clicks and for the sales, so we get we work on an affiliate commission model, so they don't take any risk and they get a lot of benefit.
Okay, so the process is that the client finds the product on Faircado, then they're redirected to the main website so they can make the payment, and then you guys get a fee from the retailer.
Exactly.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. And indeed, at the end of the day, it's very, very cheap marketing for them. So if you sell it properly, I see why it's a huge benefit for them instead of being a threat.
Yeah, and I mean, in the end, we're not doing what they do, right? We're not doing any operations. We are just, our goal is to make the whole pie bigger, and they can only benefit from that, right? We are our competitors, and the market that we are kind of in a way fighting against is the market of new, because we just, as a society, we cannot afford to have that market grow bigger. But we really want to help the secondhand and e-commerce market grow bigger, because this is part of the solution. I'm not saying it's the solution, but it's part of the solution, together with the fact that people overall should buy less. But well, that's kind of also part of the education that we're trying to do.
Do you see an inverse relationship between how much the second-hand market is increasing and whether if the first-hand market is decreasing?
So that's essentially what we're really trying to do with the extension, is to basically take the people from buying new to buying secondhand. And so there you can subtract directly. It's a substitution in a way, right? Now, I think, unfortunately, unfortunately or fortunately, the secondhand market is growing much faster than the new market or the market of new, but both are still growing.
Okay.
So, yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of capitalism 101, right? Everyone that doesn't grow in this current system is pretty much dead. So yeah, that's another topic, I guess.
That's another topic. That if we had time, I would be super happy to discuss. But let's focus on the questions, and then we might have time to also talk about that. So you guys are now present in Germany and in the UK. How do you reason which country to expand to?
Well, it's a very simple kind of analysis about how big is our potential audience there, which is mainly younger consumers. How much of a kind of sustainability secondhand focus do those consumers have? There's a really big sensitivity towards sustainable shopping in the Netherlands, for instance, which is actually quite a big market. Germany, obviously, that was kind of very first choice. Big market that buys a lot secondhand, and market that's also very fragmented. There's a lot of secondhand players, which makes our argument of being kind of an aggregator very relevant. And then obviously there's also our knowledge of this market is also quite like a secondary or third or fourth argument. For the UK, we have our chief growth officer, Ollie, comes from the UK, so he has quite a deep understanding of the market. I would have quite a deep understanding of the Belgian market probably, but it's not so much of a big one that it will be the next one we expand to. France is obviously a huge opportunity as well. And then just what I did as well was just look at the penetration of Too Good To Go and Vinted in the different in markets and understanding, okay, how big is the user pool in these markets and what is kind of the percentage of the penetration percentage, and then realizing that actually it's kind of both are actually quite reflecting each other. So if Too Good To Go and Vinted are the strongest in Germany, France, the UK, Spain, Italy, and the Netherlands, then these will probably be our next markets.
What's the process of launching a new market? Like, I'm curious, like how much focus you put into digital market versus physical marketing, as I guess.
Well, we did it only once, so launching into a new market, we did only once. What did we do? We did a out-of-home campaign in London. We had a PR agency that helped us as well with getting press coverage and getting the word out. So I was live on the BBC radio. We were covered by The Guardian and a few other cool outlets. We also bought a competitor of ours as an entry point into the market, which was actually quite a good move. I think it was, I would do that again. But other than that, we're still figuring it out, right? I'm not going to tell you that we have nailed it 100%, and maybe the day we launched the French or the Dutch market, we would do it slightly differently. I think it really depends also on the sensitivity of this market to influencer marketing, to out-of-home campaign, to events in general and community. So this is all things that we take into consideration, and then we also look at, okay, what kind of resources do we have at the moment to get to that? Yeah.
No, absolutely. I love the answer, because sometimes you would expect that you can replicate one model, and no matter how big is the company, it's on a case-by-case basis, and every country is different, and consumers are different, and the players and competitors are different. So I think it's a strong message of like the fact that it has worked once doesn't mean that it will work again.
Yeah, I hope that we'll be able to find kind of a playbook, right? Because I was talking to Too Good To Go. They seem to have that, for instance, and that worked really well for them, and they managed to scale super fast and in many different countries with that same kind of approach. That was a winning strategy for them, and I hope that we'll get to the same point. And I think to some extent it is possible. You have a few steps that will remain the same, which is onboarding local partners, first step, to make sure that you have supply, and then just on the demand side, find really the few channels that work best for you and then kind of scale that. But we're still figuring the whole thing out. So right now the playbook is still in progress.
Canvas. You guys raised 3 million about a year ago. What's the first thing that you did with that capital?
So one of those 3 million was money that we won at Slush.
Okay, congratulations. I did see that online.
Yeah, that was an amazing moment. And so it was 1 million investment from Axel, General Catalyst, Lightspeed, NEA, and Orszone. And the day of the final in Helsinki, the first thing we did after winning the 1 million with Ali was we took the shack, the enormous 2-meter high shack that we had won, and we took it with us. We went partying, and then we ended up at 4 a.m. on the central square of Helsinki having a döner, or a falafel, vegetarian döner.
Very classy.
And we were eating
for a 1 million prize.
And we were with two volunteers from Slush as well, and they just couldn't believe that we were doing this. It was a very surreal but very memorable moment. I think a falafel never tasted better, even though the Berlin ones are still the best. But that moment was quite amazing. To be more serious on the answer, what we did was hire. We hired the people that we needed in order to go to the next stage of the development of our company. We mainly hire tech people, really talented ones that we are still working with today. So I think that's probably the classical answer.
But a very legitimate one.
Yeah.
What are the roles that are most difficult to hire?
Well, more than 50% of the team is tech at this point, and tech and product. And I think what we spent most time and energy on was to find the right tech talent. And we're still looking for some. So mainly those AI machine learning geniuses and data analysts and those people who will really help to make this product bulletproof.
Yeah.
We have already some great talents in the team, but obviously we will need to strengthen that as well in the future. And
How many are you now?
We are around 15.
Okay, decent number. That's already a big team to manage.
Yeah. It's a nice size actually. I really like it.
And we touched slightly on the idea that you guys are tracking how many consumers you take away from first hand and pour them into second hand. What are the impact metrics that you track at Faircado?
Yeah, so mainly what we're tracking and the source of our impact comes from how many items did we manage to sell secondhand that would have been sold new, right? So it's really the substitution from a new product to a secondhand product that is what counts the most, because there we can very quickly say, okay, a pair of jeans is this amount of CO2, this amount of waste, this amount of resource, all of this, because you bought it secondhand instead of new, we can say that it is saved. And in this case, it's really a 1-for-1, right? Now, when we take more the role of the discovery platform or of the more aggregator that is like helping bring more convenience to the secondhand market, the impact is less easy to quantify, right? Because how do you quantify an enabler?
Yeah.
It's a lot more tricky. So we are still figuring it out. I'm not going to say that it's 100% done. And I mean, I think the whole industry is still figuring this whole impact calculation out, right? I haven't met one person who really seemed to have it all completely certain done. So, yeah.
It's very hard because there are so many things that you need to pinpoint from the process that it's just very easy to miss something. So while you might want to share these impact metrics to show everything that you're doing, because indeed, like, you are impacting an area and like taking it away from the other, what exactly do you share with consumers? Like, which are the exact numbers that will resonate with them and that will be actually true and honest? Because consumers are very smart these days. So you cannot just generalize a number, and because if they get into it, then they might find something that it's not actually true, and then we don't want to know what happens then.
Yeah, for sure. We don't share any specific metrics at this point because for the reason that I told you that we're still figuring it out. The dream would be if we could, for each offer that we would pop up with, we would say you would save by buying this book instead of the new one, you would save this amount of CO2. I know some startups who tried to calculate this category wide for electronics, for fashion, for books and so on, and they did not manage. So at some point we had the ambition to add this, but then quickly realized that it would need to be for later, because that's a startup in and of itself. And even the people who started doing only this did not manage. So we're not there yet, especially because we're not doing only fashion, right? We're doing fashion, but also garden, home, and also electronics, and also books. And so that makes the complexity of these models extremely high and very difficult to tackle, because we don't want to lie to our customers. And we don't want to pretend that you're saving 50 kilos of CO2 when actually it was just 2. So we rather not say anything and just communicate that on average, it's around 80% that you save by switching from buying new to buying CO2. But it depends on the category, depends on, if it's electronics, it's a lot more than if it's a book. So, more than just kind of an average that is accurate, I can't say, and I won't just go into kind of trying to pretend like I know.
No, fair enough. I totally agree. This reminds me that I recently had a conversation with another founder where we were discussing how consumerism is directly related to our sins. Because I wonder, like, are you aiming to change consumer behaviors, or are you trying to use the sin of overconsumption to fuel the secondhand growth?
Yeah. No, we're absolutely not trying to use the sins and kind of promote even more consumption, because that would just move the problem to a different area, but it wouldn't solve it, right? So that's what I was saying also earlier, that switching from buying new to buying secondhand needs to happen at the same time as reconsidering buying altogether. And at the same time as buying way less, but buying better stuff. And also just making sure that the things you buy are almost like, there was this influencer saying, like, you should think about what you buy as a tattoo. That you're committing to making sure that if it's broken, you'll repair it, that if it needs care, you will take care of it, and that you really commit to also giving it a second life if you're not using it anymore or if you don't like it anymore. And I think a lot of that has been lost along the way in the last years. You know, the clothes industry, the fashion industry is one of the only ones where the prices have massively decreased in the last 50 years. And so the price of fashion has decreased, and where people in the 70s used to buy around 10 to 15 pieces a year, now they're spending overall less and buying way more. Now it's around 80 pieces per year on average. It's enormous. And so the quality obviously decreased as well enormously. So we need to go back to actually just thinking more about what we're buying and buying much better, but maybe considering the cost per wear instead of the actual just cost of the piece. And that means you divide the actual cost that you're paying by the amount of time that you're going to wear this piece, and it will stay beautiful and it will kind of stay nice, which would then kind of show the real cost of fast fashion. Because if you buy a piece on Shein that is made in synthetic fabric that will, after 2 times wearing it or washing it, will already look shit, you might pay just €10, but if you can only wear it twice, then it's kind of a €5 per wear. Whereas if you buy a vintage Burberry trench for, I don't know, €200, the cost per wear might be much lower than that, because you can wear this for 10 years, 365 days.
Yeah.
And, you know, so this is also kind of a mentality shift that needs to happen.
That's the reason why I was asking, because literally last week I had this conversation with a friend and she was telling me, oh, with the same amount of money, I can buy 2 or 3 pieces on Vinted versus like first-hand piece of clothes. And I was like, that's not the mentality. So how do you do that?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's tricky, right? Because I think some people start thinking like this, and you're like, well, I don't blame you. Obviously, I also had a time where I was a bit more like filling my wardrobe with like secondhand stuff that were cool, but that were so cheap that I wasn't thinking much about it. But then I had like these bags of stuff, the pile growing of stuff to resell, which started to be a huge burden. Yeah. And then I started to kind of do this 1 in, 1 out kind of approach, or, you know, just this new trend of buying 1 piece per month tops. And really thinking about it and making it a conscious decision, and just kind of being so much happier about the one thing that you chose, because it's really made to last, and it's just one of those classics and all of that. I mean, it's just the whole consumption and overconsumption has been glorified, and we need to just find other ways to shift it and make conscious consumption the new cool and sexy thing.
Absolutely. There's a big part of our listeners that want to be entrepreneurs. What's the most important lesson that you've learned in your career so far? Something that you would have liked to know when you were younger?
There's so many things. I think maybe just don't wait until you're ready to start, because, you know, I think if I had made a lot of research about what I was getting myself into, if I had tried to learn everything and prepare myself to be a founder and be really super into it and kind of learn everything about it before starting, I don't think I would have started. I think having this
naiveness,
innocence around it kind of made me do a lot of things in my life that ended up being great things, but that I would have maybe reconsidered. And so I think if you have something in mind that would really just make the world a bit better or a lot better, just try it. And by taking the first step, it will lead you to the second step and all of that. And then your idea will become clearer and the path will get much clearer. And even if it doesn't work, you will have learned loads and be able to valorize that for your next job. So I would say just do it, really.
If you could be remembered for something in all these kind of activism that you're doing for secondhand and climate, what would it be?
I think I want to be remembered for kind of being brave and daring to rethink the status quo and contributing to changing a broken system. I think I want to be remembered for giving hope to people that they have a lot more power than they think and that they really, what they do on a daily basis really matters. Yeah, something like that. Like, I mean, my life is really turned around change making and around embracing change and initiating change for the better and just trying to make our world a little bit fairer and better and greener. And I think that would be a nice thing to be remembered for.
I love that because you've said a lot of the words or the values that also build our archetype at Reinventing Capitalism. So being bold, being a change maker, being able to dream the future that you want for yourself, and building the community that you are also building of people that have the same dreams and want to leave the same world behind. So I truly resonate with that. I have one last question for you, which is, I love to pick experts' brains on their thoughts about the future. So I want you to imagine that you're looking into a big crystal ball that shows you the future. Where do you see the industry of fashion consumption, or I guess the categories that you guys are working with at Faircado at the moment, going in the next 5 years?
So e-commerce in general?
Yeah, I'll leave it to you. It's a white canvas answer.
Awesome. So in my crystal ball, I can see that re-commerce will become bigger than e-commerce, in that the logic of how people consume will shift towards thinking secondhand first and using what already exists before buying something new. And that will actually really be enabled by a lot of the latest development of technology that we try to integrate, which is, AI and machine learning based and making convenience at the center of the re-commerce market. Yeah, I think that and it's already happening, most of the mainstream brands and marketplaces are already rethinking how they operate. Every day I get the news that a new label has launched their secondhand and pre-loved offering, from Zara to Decathlon to Gucci to IKEA, literally everyone. So this really shows that we are onto something. And well, within the next 5 years, obviously, Faircado will be in every consumer's pocket and on every consumer's laptop to really make sure that they feel empowered to actually make better purchase decisions on a daily basis, while at the same time saving money for other things that are maybe more important. So I think most consumers are tending towards buying less and buying better. There was actually I was reading a report that Gen Z now think about the resale value of what they're buying before they buy it, which is a really good trend, going towards, well, if I buy something that's of higher quality, I know that it's an investment instead of pure consumption, because I can resell it at some point as well for still a good price. And so I think then in circular consumption instead of linear consumption, that shifts the whole market, right? That means that buying and selling will become much easier, and that automatically turns the whole linear consumption into a circular consumption. And then that obviously contributes to my dream of turning our linear economy into a circular economy.
I love that answer. I would love to see numbers of how the second-hand market is growing, how the circularity is growing, and how the linearity of the market is decreasing. So I hope that we can see these quantifiable results in the near future, and we can get more people to buy into this new paradigm. So thank you so much, Evolena. Thank you for opening up. I've loved our conversation, and hopefully we get more and more minds to buy into our vision.
Thanks.